Tonight we travel not to kings or empires, but to a city of smoke and iron. A place once called Grayhaven, where chimneys rose higher than churches, and the poor learned to live in the shadow of progress. Here, a young doctor named Harrison spends his life tending to bodies the world forgot. Through his eyes, we'll wander the narrow streets of the industrial age, where mercy was rare, and every breath was a small act of rebellion. You'll hear the cough of the mills, the whispers of reformers, the quiet courage of those who refuse to vanish. And as the night deepens, you may find yourself asking, what does it mean for a city, or a soul, to finally learn to breathe? This is Old Worlds for Sleep, where we drift through forgotten histories and fall asleep to the sound of humanity remembering itself. So lie back, let the rain fall softly, and let us take you to Grayhaven, where the lights never truly go out and every story ends with hope. The morning fog of Grayhaven does not rise, it clings. It seeps through every crack, every window frame, every breath. Dr. Harrison wakes before the first factory whistle sounds, though the city itself never truly sleeps. Somewhere in the distance, machines are already stirring, coughing out smoke that will soon blanket the streets. His small room above the dispensary smells faintly of carbolic acid and damp linen. He dresses by lamplight, buttoning his coat with fingers still aching from the previous day's work. When he glances in the cracked mirror, a tired young man stares back, 29 years old, though his eyes belong to someone twice that age. Outside, the air tastes of soot. The gas lamps glow dull orange against the haze. Children hurry past with tin lunch pails, men march toward the mills, and women sweep the stoops of tenements that will be coated again by dusk. The city breathes in labor and exhales exhaustion. As Harrison walks toward the dispensary, he hears a familiar sound, coughing. It rises from doorways, alleys, windows left open to catch what little air circulates between the buildings. Grayhaven coughs like an old man, endlessly clearing its throat. He meets the milk vendor at the corner. "Morning, doctor," the man says, eyes rimmed red. "Morning, Henry. How's the leg?" "Still there, thanks to you," the man laughs, though it ends in a wince. The infection had nearly taken it last month. At the dispensary door, Harrison pauses. Inside, the waiting room is already full. He can hear the low murmur of voices, mothers soothing children, old men muttering prayers, the occasional cry that pierces through. It's not yet 7. He lights the main lamp and breathes in the scent of disinfectant and coal smoke, the twin perfumes of his profession. The nurse, Miss Allen, hands him the first patient file with a knowing look. "We've got a long morning ahead, doctor." The first is a little girl, no more than 6, her breathing shallow and rasping. Her mother's face is pale with fear. "Name?" "Elsie," the woman whispers. "She started choking in the night." Harrison bends close, listening to the rattle in the child's throat. "Diphtheria," he doesn't need a microscope to know. There's little he can do except comfort. He prepares a small dose of laudanum, hoping it will ease the child's struggle, though both he and the mother know it's no cure. "Keep her warm," he says softly, "and pray she keeps breathing through the night." Outside, the factory whistles scream, the signal that the city's engines have awakened. The sound cuts through the quiet like a commandment. For a moment, Harrison stands at the window and watches the endless procession of workers. Faces gray as the fog, shoulders hunched beneath invisible weight. He wonders, how many of them will he see again today? How many will return tomorrow missing fingers, eyes clouded by dust, lungs scarred by the very air they breathe? He presses his palm to the cold glass. "If you lived here," the narrator's voice asks gently, "would you still call this progress? Would you wake each morning knowing the city is feeding on you and keep walking anyway?" Harrison returns to his patients. A man with a crushed hand, a young woman faint from hunger, an old seamstress with a cough that shakes her bones. One by one, they pass before him like pages in a ledger written in pain. By midday, the air inside the dispensary is stifling. The coal stove struggles to keep warmth without choking the room. Miss Allen pours tea into tin cups, her hands trembling from fatigue. "You should rest, doctor," she murmurs. He smiles faintly. "Rest is for those who can afford to stop." In the corner, the little girl Elsie still breathes, faintly, her mother dozing beside her chair. The sight holds him in place. Not pity, not even despair, but something quieter, heavier. A recognition. Outside, the fog thickens again. It carries with it the smell of oil, iron, and damp brick. the scent of a city that has forgotten what clean air feels like. When Harrison finally steps outside at dusk, the lamps have already been lit. Their light glows through the mist like small, fragile hearts trying to keep the darkness at bay. He stands there for a long time, bag in hand, until Miss Allen calls from behind, "Doctor, where will you go now?" He looks toward the narrow alleys leading deeper into Grayhaven. "Where the coughing is loudest," he says quietly, and with that he disappears into the fog once more. The next morning begins not with birdsong but with silence, the kind of silence that hangs before bad news. Dr. Harrison hasn't yet finished his tea when the knock comes. 3 quick taps, hesitant, almost apologetic. It's Miss Allen. Her eyes say everything. "Elsie passed in the night." He sets the cup down carefully, though his hand trembles. There is no surprise, only the familiar ache of inevitability. He buttons his coat and follows her through the gray dawn to the family's lodging. The tenement is narrow, walls stained with years of smoke and damp. The air inside feels heavy, as if grief itself thickens it. Elsie lies on the small cot, wrapped in a faded blanket. Her mother sits beside her, dry-eyed, one hand resting on the child's still chest. "She just stopped breathing," the mother whispers. "Didn't even cry. I thought she was sleeping." Harrison kneels beside her, checking for signs he knows won't be there. The little girl's lips are pale, her small hands folded neatly, as if waiting for something she never received. He closes her eyes gently. It's a small ritual, but it matters. Outside, footsteps echo in the hallway, the slow trudge of another day beginning. Someone shouts for rent. A baby cries. Life continues, indifferent to one child less in the world. "Do you have anyone to help?" he asks softly. The mother shakes her head. Her father's at the mill. Can't afford to miss a shift. He leaves coins on the table. More than he should, less than enough. As he turns to go, the mother finally speaks again. "Will it ever stop, doctor? The sickness, the smoke, the dying?" Harrison hesitates. The truth catches in his throat. "I don't know," he says at last. "But I hope you do." When he steps back onto the street, the fog swallows him whole. The city hums to life, gears grinding, hammers striking, carts rattling across cobblestones slick with soot. Above, chimneys exhale black smoke into a sky already bruised. He wonders, not for the first time, how many children Grayhaven has buried in its bricks. The day's work begins again, as it always does. There are injuries from the mills, a crushed wrist, a burned arm, a gash that won't stop bleeding. Then come the fevers, the coughs, the hollow-eyed mothers asking for something to help him sleep. Harrison gives what he can, powders, syrups, kind words, knowing each is a fragile thread holding back the tide. Around noon, a boy limps in, no older than 12. His hands shake uncontrollably. "Work at the paint works," he says proudly, though his lips twitch with pain. "Mix in the white powder." Harrison examines him and feels the dread settle. "Lead poisoning." "Do your hands always shake like this?" "Yes, sir." Makes the boss shout, but I can still stir the paint. "Do you ever feel dizzy? Sick to your stomach?" "All the time." "And you keep working?" The boy shrugs. "If I don't, we don't eat." Harrison writes a note. Useless really, but it makes him feel less helpless. "Rest if you can. Don't touch the powder more than you must." He gives the boy a paper packet of medicine. The child grins as if holding treasure. "Thanks, doctor. I'll tell Mum you fixed me up." When he leaves, Harrison sits back in his chair. His tea has gone cold. He stares at the empty doorway where the fog creeps in like a ghost. He whispers to no one, "How long can a city live by feeding on its children?" And to the listener, the voice drifts closer. "If you were here, would you keep trying to heal what refuses to change? Or would you walk away before the fog swallows you too?" That evening, Harrison visits the dispensary again to check on the few he can still help. Miss Allen records the day's patients in her careful script. 72 treated, she murmurs. 11 turned away. No beds left. He looks out the window. The lamps flicker in the street below, tiny stars trapped beneath the haze. In one of those rooms, a child like Elsie still breathes, fighting the city's air with borrowed lungs. He closes his journal for the night and sits by the stove, listening to the slow tick of cooling metal. Somewhere nearby, church bells toll. In that sound, low, distant, unhurried, Grayhaven counts its losses, though no one keeps the tally. When he finally lies down, exhaustion pulls him towards sleep, but the fog presses against his window as if watching. And in the quiet between waking and dreaming, Harrison imagines he hears a child's voice whisper, "Doctor, will it ever stop?" He has no answer. Only the hum of the factories, endless and unbroken replies. By dawn, the line outside the dispensary has already formed, a crooked spine of humanity stretching down the narrow street. They stand silently, wrapped in threadbare coats, clutching handkerchiefs to their mouths, their breath visible in the cold. Mothers with infants, old men stooped from labor, factory boys with bandaged hands, all waiting for the same thing, mercy disguised as medicine. Dr. Harrison arrives to find the crowd shifting restlessly. Some have been here since midnight. He nods to them, guilt already heavy on his shoulders. He knows he will see perhaps 50 before supplies run out. The rest will be turned away to suffer unseen. Inside, the small waiting room smells of wet wool, coal smoke, and despair. Miss Allen, efficient as always, has begun triage, sorting patients by urgency, though urgency is universal here. "Severe cough, third visit," she whispers, handing him a card. "Child with fever, likely scarlet. Man from the foundry, deep cut, infected." Harrison takes the first patient, a middle-aged woman with eyes that dart nervously. Her fingers are yellowed, cracked, the nails lifting from their beds. "Laundry work," she says. "Hands won't heal." He cleans the wounds gently, wraps them in linen, and gives her a small jar of ointment that costs more than she can afford to repay. "Rest when you can," he tells her. She laughs softly. "When can I, doctor?" Next comes a man with a cough so deep it rattles the chair beneath him. The air in Grayhaven chews lungs until they crumble. Harrison listens to the hollow rattle of air through damaged flesh, the sound of a life eroding grain by grain. "You must stop working at the mill," he says. "Stop work?" the man wheezes, incredulous. "And eat what?" "Smoke." The queue never ends. For every patient treated, 2 more arrive. Miss Allen's handwriting grows cramped as she scribbles notes and prescriptions, the ink blotting from haste. A little boy waits quietly in a corner, holding his younger sister on his lap. Both are barefoot. The girl's cheeks are flushed with fever. "Mother's gone to fetch coal," the boy explains when Harrison kneels beside him. "How old are you?" "She's 4. Harrison checks the girl's pulse. "Too fast." He gives the boy a paper packet of powder. "Mix this in water." Small sips, slowly. The boy nods solemnly. "Will it make her better?" "It will help," Harrison lies. He watches them leave, 2 small silhouettes swallowed by the fog. As the morning wears on, exhaustion blurs the hours. Harrison feels his own breath shorten, not from illness but from the suffocating closeness of so much pain. Every face begins to blend into the next, every story another verse in the same grim hymn. At noon, he steps outside for a moment of air. The queue still snakes along the street. People watch him hopefully, as if his mere presence promises relief. A woman calls out, "Doctor, just a look, please?" Her voice cracks. Harrison shakes his head helplessly. "We're full for today." A murmur passes through the line. Disappointment, not anger. They've learned not to expect more than what the day can give. He leans against the cold brick wall, eyes closing briefly. The fog presses close, carrying whispers, coughing, prayers, the clink of coins exchanged for hope. "If you stood here," the narrator asks softly, "how long would you wait for a chance to be healed? Would you still believe in kindness, or would you trade it for bread?" When he returns inside, Miss Allen is bandaging a factory worker's hand. The man grits his teeth as she ties the cloth. "Caught it in the loom," he mutters. "Lucky it didn't take the whole arm." "Luck," Harrison murmurs. The word feels hollow. In the corner, a small girl vomits into a rag. Her mother apologizes repeatedly, tears streaking her soot-stained cheeks. Harrison kneels, wipes the child's mouth, and offers water. "It's not her fault," he says gently. The mother looks up, bewildered. Fault? He realizes she wasn't apologizing for the mess. She was apologizing for needing help. By late afternoon, the dispensary floor is slick with melted snow from boots and the ash of coal dust carried in on coats. The light through the window fades from gray to amber. Harrison glances at the clock. 4 hours past closing. Still they come. Finally, Miss Allen places her hand on his arm. "That's enough, doctor." He nods, though the word enough feels like a lie. He extinguishes the lamp, leaving only the glow from the stove. Outside, the queue dissolves into the fog. Those turned away vanish quietly, their footsteps fading into the hum of the city. For a moment, Harrison stands alone in the silence they leave behind. He feels the emptiness settle inside him like cold water in a basin. Somewhere, far off, a whistle blows. Another shift beginning, another day feeding the great machine of Grayhaven. And in that moment, he understands. This queue will form again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next, until the city itself forgets there was ever a time when people didn't have to beg for their lives. He closes the door gently as if not to wake the dead. Evening finds Dr. Harrison walking the narrow lanes behind the paint works. The air here tastes of metal. Gray dust clings to every brick, every leaf, every breath. It glows faintly in the lantern light, a poisonous shimmer that the workers jokingly call the city's snow. He's come looking for Thomas, the boy with the trembling hands. 12, maybe 13, though malnutrition makes age a riddle here. Harrison remembers him from weeks ago, the cheerfulness forced over pain, the stubborn pride of a child already worn into adulthood. He finds him sitting by the factory gate, legs drawn up, eyes glassy. "Evening, doctor," Thomas says, trying to grin. "Didn't think you'd come down here. Not much for gentlemen to see." Harrison kneels beside him. "Missed you at the dispensary today." The boy shrugs. "Boss said if I left again I could stay gone. Can't risk it. Mum needs the wages." His fingers tremble even when still. The nails are pale, the skin beneath them bluish-white. Lead has a way of marking its victims like a cruel signature. "Show me your hands," Harrison says gently. Thomas hesitates, then extends them. They shake violently now. The doctor takes one in his gloved palm. It feels cold, lifeless. "You've been having headaches?" "Every night." "Stomach pains?" Thomas nods. "Feels like something's twisting me up inside." Harrison sighs. "You need to stop working with the lead." The boy gives a small, breathless laugh. "Stop working, stop eating." "Same thing here, ain't it?" Behind them, the factory roars, gears grinding, hammers striking, the echo of endless labor. From a window above, a pale dust drifts like snowfall. Men emerge from the doors, coughing, their boots leaving gray footprints that vanish into the fog. Harrison looks at the child beside him and feels a familiar, helpless rage. He knows the textbooks, the treatments, the chemical explanations, but none of them cure hunger. He pulls a small bottle from his bag. "Here. It might ease the pain a little." Thomas accepts it carefully, eyes wide. "Powders again?" "Yes. Mix a pinch in water." "And?" He hesitates, then adds softly, "Try not to touch the paint more than you must." The boy nods solemnly. "You always say that, doctor. And you never listen." "Guess we both do what we have to." They share a small smile, fragile but real. "Tell me," Harrison says, "what would you do if you didn't have to work here?" Thomas tilts his head, thinking. "Don't know. Never thought of it." "Try," the doctor insists. The boy grins, teeth bright in the lamplight. "Maybe learn to fix watches. They're quiet, you know? Machines that tick soft instead of scream." The fog thickens between them. Harrison imagines the sound of 1,000 clocks ticking in unison, each marking another heartbeat of the city. "And you?" The voice of the storyteller drifts toward the listener. "If you lived in a place that stole your breath for bread, what dream would you still dare to keep?" A whistle blows from inside the factory, a signal for the night shift. Men shuffle back through the gates. Thomas rises slowly, gripping his stomach. "Better go," he says. "They dock pay for every minute late." Harrison touches his shoulder. "Come to the dispensary tomorrow. Please." Thomas nods. "If I can." The boy disappears into the gray light. His small figure blends with the smoke until he's indistinguishable from it. Harrison stands there long after, staring at the gate that swallowed him. The metallic air burns his throat. He feels suddenly ancient, though the night around him hums with youth, the kind that dies before it grows old. A factory bell tolls. Another begins. The sound ripples through the city like a heartbeat. He walks home slowly, boots scraping over cobblestones slick with dust. Along the way, he passes a group of children chasing a wheel rim, laughing as they run. Their laughter cuts through the haze, bright and defiant. For a moment, Grayhaven almost sounds alive again. Back in his small room above the dispensary, Harrison lights a lamp and opens his journal. He writes, "Thomas, age 12. Lead poisoning severe. No treatment possible without removal from exposure. Economic reality, immovable. He stares at the words, then draws a line through immovable. Writes instead, unacceptable. The lamp flickers. Outside, the fog presses against the window pane like a living thing, whispering with the voices of the city, coughing, clanging, praying. Harrison closes his eyes and whispers to himself, "You can't save everyone." But something in him answers, quiet and stubborn, "Maybe not. But I can keep trying." The next afternoon, Dr. Harrison follows the sound of coughing down a narrow side street where the light itself seems afraid to enter. The houses here lean against one another like tired men. Their windows weep condensation that smells faintly of rot. This is where Grayhaven breathes last, in its cellars, where the poorest live not upon the earth but beneath it. He stops at a doorway half hidden below the street, stoops, and descends stone steps slick with damp. The air thickens with each step, mold, sewage, and human breath blending into something almost solid. Inside, a single candle flickers in the darkness. The ceiling is so low he must stoop to stand. A woman turns as he enters, clutching a rag to her mouth. "Dr. Harrison," she says with weary relief. "Didn't think you'd come down here again." He recognizes her voice, Sarah, mother of two, both sickly. He's treated her before in the dispensary, but now her husband lies bedridden, coughing red into a rag. "Had to see how you were managing," he says softly. The room is barely large enough for a table, a cot, and a cradle. The cradle is empty. A photograph of a baby, faded and cracked, sits above it. Harrison looks at it, then away. "Another child?" he asks quietly. Sarah nods. "Last summer. Fever took him." The silence that follows is heavy but gentle. He's learned that grief here needs no probing, only space. He kneels beside the husband, pale, skeletal, lungs laboring like bellows near the end of their strength. "How long has the bleeding been this bad?" 3 days, Sarah says. "Can't keep food down. Can't keep work neither." Harrison touches the man's wrist, the pulse weak, fluttering like a trapped bird. "It's tuberculosis," he says softly. "You must keep him warm. Dry air if you can find it." Sarah laughs, the sound cracked like the plaster walls. Dry air? In a cellar? He feels the absurdity of his own words burn inside him. The textbooks never prepared him for this, treating diseases born not from germs but from poverty itself. He mixes a small tonic from his bag. "This might ease the coughing." She takes it with trembling hands. "You're kind, doctor. But kindness don't fix walls that leak or bellies that starve." Her words strike like truth often does, quietly but leaving bruises. He crouches near the child's small chair, now used to hold firewood. His eyes drift over the damp stones, the single cracked window at pavement level where boots pass by like ghosts. From above, faint laughter trickles down, people walking home, oblivious to the life beneath their feet. If you listen closely, the narrator's voice murmurs to the listener, "Would you hear them too? The ones the city buries alive before they die." Sarah sets the tonic on the table. "Sometimes," she says softly, "I dream of fresh air. Just once before I go. Think the Lord has any of that left for the likes of us?" Harrison doesn't answer. He simply opens the window a fraction wider, letting in a sliver of the cold street breeze. It carries the faint scent of rain, not clean, not pure, but enough to make Sarah smile for the first time. As he prepares to leave, she presses something into his hand, a single daisy, wilted but stubbornly alive. "Grew it by the step," she says, "in the crack where the water drips. Reminds me there's still a bit of life down here." He nods, pocketing the flower like a sacred relic. "You remind me too," he says quietly. Climbing back up the steps, he feels the weight of the air lighten with each rung, but the heaviness in his chest deepens. At the top he looks back. The door closes softly, sealing Sarah and her family again beneath the world that forgot them. He steps into the gray drizzle. Above ground, people hurry past, unaware of the small kingdom of suffering that lies just beneath their boots. The city hums on, omnivorous, endless. "Would you keep walking?" the voice asks gently, "if you knew every stone beneath your feet was laid on someone's lungs?" That night, back in his small room, Harrison places the daisy in a cup of water. It droops, but it does not die. He writes one sentence in his journal before the ink runs dry. "The sickness begins where the light does not reach." Then he sits in silence until the city's heartbeat, the thrum of factories and the whisper of human breath, becomes the only lullaby Grayhaven knows. The rain falls fine and steady over Grayhaven the next morning, turning every street into a thin river of soot. Dr. Harrison walks beneath a crooked umbrella, his boots sinking into the black mud between cobblestones. The sky hangs low and heavy as if the smoke itself has weight. He isn't heading to the hospital today. Instead, he turns toward the edge of the district, a tangle of crooked lanes locals call the Winding. Here the doctors rarely come, but the people whisper about a woman who does what they cannot. Mrs. Whitlow, the wise woman of the Winding. Her cottage is older than the city around it, wedged between two tenements like a relic from another century. Herbs hang from the rafters, their scent thick and unfamiliar: mint, sage, foxglove, lavender, and something sharper that bites the nose. When Harrison knocks, a voice rasps from within. Doors open. If it's death you're bringing, set him by the fire. He smiles faintly and steps inside. The room glows amber in the lamplight. A fire crackles low. The old woman sits hunched over a table covered in bottles and roots, her hands gnarled like the branches she grinds. Not death today, Harrison says. Only questions. She peers at him through wire spectacles. Doctor, You look too young to be tired already. He chuckles softly. Grayhaven ages us all. Or maybe you care too much, she says, reaching for a jar of dried leaves. Same thing, really. She pours a handful into a pot, adds boiling water, and the room fills with a clean, sharp scent of willow bark. Tea. He nods. For pain? For everything. But mostly for remembering we're still alive. They sit in silence for a while, the only sound the bubbling kettle and the muted hum of rain outside. Harrison studies the walls, shelves lined with jars labeled in faded ink. Comfrey, chamomile, pennyroyal, foxglove. Some would call her remedy superstition. But he knows well that in places where medicine can't reach, faith becomes its own kind of science. What do they come to you for? He asks. She smiles thinly. What don't they come for? Burns, coughs, bad births, broken hearts. Same as they come to you, only I charge less. He laughs softly. Do you ever worry your cures might do harm? She looks up sharply. Do you? The question hangs between them. He thinks of the laudanum he's given to calm pain, the powders that numb but do not heal, the empty promises he's had to make. Mrs. Whitlow pours 2 cups of tea and hands him one. Her fingers shake slightly, but not from weakness, from years of motion that never stopped. I've seen doctors kill with pride, she says. And I've seen women save lives with nothing but hot water and kindness. The trick is knowing when to use which. Outside, thunder murmurs distantly, rolling over the rooftops. Harrison sips the tea. It's bitter, grounding. You could have been a nurse, he says. Even a doctor. Ah, she chuckles. But then I'd have had to stop listening. Doctors talk too much. I listen, I touch, I sit. That's most of healing, you know. Not the powders, not the bleeding, just being there long enough for someone to believe they matter. Her words fall like drops of warm rain in the cold room. From the doorway, a young girl appears, clutching a basket of eggs. Morning, Mrs. Whitlow. Mum says thanks for the salve. Tell your mum I'll send more when the moon turns, the old woman replies, placing a small jar into the girl's basket. After she leaves, Harrison asks, You charge in eggs? Eggs, bread, sometimes stories, she says, smiling. Depends what they can spare. The narrator's voice drifts toward the listener. If you had nothing but kindness to trade, would you still call it enough? Harrison finishes his tea and sets the cup down gently. You've seen this city longer than I have, he says. Do you think it can heal? Mrs. Whitlow looks at him for a long time, her gray eyes sharp as flint. Heal? No, she says. But people can. And they will if someone reminds them how. When he rises to leave, she presses a small bundle of dried herbs into his hand. For the air, she says. Hang it by your window. Keeps the bad spirits out, or at least makes them smell better. He laughs genuinely this time. I'll take any help I can get. Good boy, she says, turning back to her herbs. Now go save someone who still believes doctors make miracles. Outside, the rain has stopped. The streets glisten as if freshly washed, though the soot will return by nightfall. Harrison walks slowly, the scent of herbs clinging to his coat. For the first time in weeks, the air feels lighter. At the corner, he pauses and looks back. Through the small window of Mrs. Whitlow's cottage, he He can see her silhouette bent over her work, one more soul fighting the city's sickness in her own quiet way. He whispers almost to himself, maybe there's more than one kind of medicine after all. By dusk, the city's lamps glow dim through the mist, their light blurred by smoke and drizzle. Dr. Harrison walks past the iron gates of the Grayhaven workhouse, his collar turned up against the chill. The sign above the entrance reads House of Industry, but everyone calls it what it truly is, the last stop. Inside, the air is heavy with disinfectant and decay. Rows of narrow iron beds stretch into the distance, each occupied by a body, not all of them living. The windows are high and small, the light sickly and pale. A matron in a gray uniform greets him with the practiced indifference of someone who has long since stopped expecting miracles. "Doctor's late," she says. "Doctor's tired," Harrison answers softly. She leads him through the ward. Every step echoes off stone walls. The smell is overwhelming, sweat, sickness, and something sweeter that clings to death. At the first bed, an old man lies staring at the ceiling, lips moving soundlessly. Harrison bends down. "Do you know where you are, sir?" The man blinks slowly. "Heaven," he croaks. "Smells wrong." "Grayhaven," Harrison replies. "Ah," the man sighs. "Close enough." The matron snorts softly. "He's been here a year. No family. No visitors." Harrison adjusts the man's blanket, though it's barely enough to stop the shivering. "He still feels cold," he says quietly. "They all do," she replies. "Can't cure cold when it's in the bones." They move to the next bed, a woman no older than 40, but her face looks twice that. Her breath rattles in her chest, a sound between a sigh and a moan. "Coal dust," the matron says. "Coughs all night." Harrison places a hand on her shoulder. "Can you eat?" She shakes her head weakly. "Not hungry, just tired." He writes her name in his notebook, knowing she won't live to see it read again. At the far end of the ward, a young man mutters to himself, eyes wide and unfocused. "Mad from fever," the matron explains. "Or hunger. Sometimes both." The patient looks up suddenly and whispers, "They're coming for me." The machines. Hear them? Harrison listens. And indeed, faintly through the walls, he hears the rhythmic pulse of the city. The factories working through the night, their mechanical heartbeats leaking even into this place of the dying. He sits by the man's bed for a while, offering presence rather than words. The man calms, eventually sleeping, though his fingers keep twitching as if pulling invisible levers. "If you could hear the hum of Grayhaven now," the narrator murmurs to the listener, "would you think it sounded like progress or mourning?" Further down the ward, a child coughs weakly in his sleep. His hair is thin, his ribs visible even through the blanket. "Workhouse-born," the matron says. "His mother's in the next room, dying of the same thing." Harrison touches the boy's forehead, fever, sharp and relentless. "Do you pray?" he asks softly. The matron shrugs. "No time. Too many to feed, too few hands." In the adjoining room, the mother lies still, her face turned toward the wall. When he tells her gently that her son is sleeping, she whispers, "Keep him sleeping. Don't let him wake to this." Her breath fades with the last word. Harrison stands motionless for a long moment. Then he closes her eyes and lowers his head. The matron speaks behind him, her tone flat but not unkind. "You can't fix Grayhaven, doctor." He replies without turning. "Does that mean we stop trying?" For a while, there is only the quiet hum of rain against the windows. He moves from bed to bed, checking pulses, changing bandages, writing prescriptions that will never be filled. Each touch, each glance, becomes a small act of rebellion, a reminder that these lives, though forgotten by the world, still matter to someone. By the time he reaches the last patient, his lantern is nearly out of oil. The matron walks him to the door. "You'll be back tomorrow?" He nods. "As long as they need me." She smiles faintly, the first trace of softness in her weary face. "Then you'll never leave." Outside, the fog presses close again, wrapping the city in silence. From the window above, a faint cough echoes, then stops. Harrison pulls his coat tighter. He looks up at the dark outline of the workhouse, the house of forgotten souls, and whispers a small prayer that he no longer believes in. When a city forgets its poor, the voice of the storyteller lingers in the night. It begins to forget its soul. And with that thought, Harrison walks on through the mist, his lantern flickering like a fragile heartbeat in the dark. The rain has washed nothing clean. By morning, the streets of Grayhaven glisten with filth disguised as reflection. Pools of oily water mirror the crooked rooftops, and the air tastes faintly of chemicals and coal. Dr. Harrison walks through the market square, his steps slow, his eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. The night's visit to the workhouse still clings to him, the smell of sickness that no soap can erase. Here though, life hums louder. Vendors shout, horses clatter, the poor barter for bread and coal. And among the fishmongers and fruit sellers, one cart draws a louder crowd, painted bright red, trimmed with gold letters that gleam through the fog. A man stands atop it, waving a bottle in the air. His voice is thunder wrapped in charm. Step right up, ladies and gentlemen. Cure your coughs, calm your nerves, banish fatigue. Dr. Culpepper's miracle elixir. Pure vitality in a bottle. 1 shilling only. Harrison stops to watch. The man's coat is too fine for this street, his smile too wide. Beside him, a young woman coughs theatrically, drinks from the bottle, and instantly straightens with renewed vigor. The crowd gasps. See, the man cries. Cured before your eyes. Consumption? Gone. Headaches? Vanished. Ailing spirits? Restored. He tosses the bottle to a child who catches it in wonder. The crowd begins to buy, coins clinking like prayers. Harrison steps closer, reading the fine print on a discarded label. Contains alcohol, opium, laudanum, sugar. He exhales slowly. He's seen this before, the theater of desperation. For many, it's the only medicine they can afford. For some, it's the last thing they'll ever drink. He moves through the crowd, finds the man's assistant, a boy no older than 15, handing out samples. Who makes this? Harrison asks. The boy shrugs. London maybe. Or nowhere. Doesn't matter, does it? The boy's eyes are dull, already knowing the lie but too hungry to care. Harrison buys 1 bottle, turning it in his hand. The liquid glows amber in the morning light, beautiful in its deceit. The vendor notices him. Ah, a gentleman of science I see. You look weary, sir. Try a sip. Works wonders for the nerves. I'm a physician, Harrison says quietly. And you're poisoning these people. The man's smile flickers but doesn't fade. Ah, doctor, we're both in the same trade. You sell hope from a building. I sell it from a cart. Difference is, mine works faster. The crowd laughs, half uneasy, half amused. Harrison feels the argument tightening in his chest, but he sees the faces watching him. Mothers clutching bottles as if they were miracles. Men too tired to care what they swallow so long as it dulls the ache. He lowers his voice. Do you even know what this stuff does to them? The man leans close. Keeps them quiet, doctor. That's worth more than healing, isn't it? For a moment, all the city's noise seems to fade. Harrison feels a strange stillness, the kind that comes before storms or after death. He uncaps the bottle and pours its contents into the gutter. The sweet, sharp smell of laudanum fills the air. The vendor glares. You'll pay for that. No, Harrison says softly. They already have. The storyteller's voice turns toward the listener. If your pain could be sold for profit, would you still call it yours? The vendor snarls but says nothing more. The crowd disperses slowly, muttering, half believing the doctor, half hoping the miracle was real. Hope, after all, is the cheapest drug and the hardest to quit. Later that afternoon, Harrison walks through a quieter street. In a doorway, he sees a woman slumped against the wall, an empty bottle beside her, Culpepper's elixir. Her breathing is shallow, her pulse weak. He kneels beside her, checking her pupils, constricted to pinpoints. He whispers, "How much did you take?" Her lips move, barely forming words. Felt warm, felt better. He works quickly, forcing air into her lungs, trying to wake her, but the opiate sleep is deep and heavy. After a long minute, she stirs, coughing weakly. He props her up, wiping her mouth with his sleeve. "Better?" he asks. She nods faintly, eyes glassy. "Dreamed I was somewhere clean." He doesn't answer. He knows that's the cruelest gift of these tonics, the illusion of comfort. As he walks away, he throws the empty bottle into a trash heap where dozens more glint among the ashes. Each one catches a sliver of light, like the city's broken stars. That night, as he writes his notes, he pens a single line. Grayhaven runs on 2 fuels, coal and false hope. He blows out the candle, but the smell of the elixir clings to his hands. Outside, somewhere in the fog, the vendor's voice echoes faintly again. Cure your coughs, cure your cares, 1 shilling to forget the world. And for a moment, the city almost believes him. The rain returns that night, slow, steady, almost merciful. Dr. Harrison climbs the crooked stairs of a tenement that leans as if weary from its own existence. The hall smells of boiled cabbage, wet wool, and the faint metallic scent of sickness. He's been called to see a man named James, once a miner, now a shadow in a bed. A woman opens the door before he can knock. Her sleeves are rolled, her eyes rimmed red. The faint light behind her flickers over a room so small it could barely hold the family's grief, let alone their bodies. "Thank you for coming," she whispers. "I'm Grace." Her husband lies on the bed, coughing so hard his frame lifts with each spasm. A basin beside him is streaked with blood. Silicosis, Harrison says under his breath, the miner's disease. The lungs turn to dust from the inside out. Grace kneels, rubbing her husband's chest with a rag dipped in camphor oil. Her hands never stop moving. He worked the pits until he couldn't. Said he'd rather die working than starve sitting. Harrison sets down his bag. "May I?" She nods. He listens to the man's lungs, each breath a shudder, each exhale a battle lost. "How long since he could work?" 6 months. "How long since you've slept?" She gives a faint smile. Same answer. He mixes a few drops of laudanum into a cup. "This might ease the pain." Grace takes it but hesitates. "Will it make him sleep?" "Yes." "Then only half," she says firmly. He hates missing the night sounds. Says they remind him he's still here. Harrison studies her, the exhaustion carved into her face, the quiet strength that holds the room together like invisible mortar. She continues to wash her husband's face, hums a tune so soft it almost dissolves into the hum of the rain. A kettle whistles faintly on the small stove. She pours tea, thin, pale liquid, and presses a cup into Harrison's hands. "Sit, doctor. You look worse than we do." He almost refuses, then accepts. The warmth feels strange against his palms, too gentle after so much cold. "You've done all you can," he tells her quietly. Grace shakes her head. "No, doctor. There's always something left. A song, a story, a bit of light. I talk to him even when he can't answer. I think he still hears." The miner opens his eyes, cloudy, unfocused. "Grace. I'm here, love." "Still raining?" "Still raining." He smiles weakly. "Then the world hasn't stopped yet." If someone you loved was fading, the narrator's voice asks softly, "How long would you stay awake just to keep them company?" Hours pass like candle wax melting. Harrison dozes in a chair, half dreaming, half listening. When he wakes, Grace is still at the bedside, eyes open, humming to the rhythm of her husband's breath. "He wanted mountains," she murmurs suddenly. "Doctor said he should breathe clean air high up. Said maybe Switzerland." She laughs quietly. "We can't afford coal most weeks. But I told him, maybe there's a mountain in heaven and they'll let him climb it." The candle gutters. The man's breathing slows, a long space between each sigh. Grace leans closer, whispering words too soft to hear. When the silence comes, she doesn't cry. She only smooths his hair and covers his face with the sheet. Harrison lowers his head. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," she says. "He worked every day he could. He died with my hand in his. Not everyone gets that." She looks at him then, eyes steady despite the tears gathering there. "You'll write his name down, won't you? So he's not forgotten." "I will," Harrison says, and he means it. As he leaves, Grace follows him to the door. "You'll keep helping them," she says. "The others, even when it doesn't change anything." He nods. "I don't know how to stop." "Good," she says softly. "The world needs more people who don't." Outside, the rain has thinned to mist. Harrison walks back through the alley, each window glowing faintly, each one a small world where someone is fighting the same quiet battle against loss. He stops beneath a flickering lamp, opens his journal, and writes only one line. Grace, her name suits her. The storyteller's voice fades into a whisper. Sometimes the strongest hearts are those that never get to rest. And in the stillness that follows, Grayhaven breathes again, weary, wounded, but still alive. Grayhaven does not rest. Even in the hours when decent cities close their eyes, this one keeps turning, like a fevered patient tossing between dreams. Dr. Harrison walks through the fog-choked streets long after midnight, his lantern haloed in smoke. The sound of machinery rolls faintly through the air, a low metallic heartbeat pulsing beneath the cobblestones. He pauses, listening. It feels less like industry now and more like breathing, the slow, uneven respiration of something vast and living. The city exhales soot. It inhales hope. A woman passes him, shawl drawn tight, eyes down. A child follows barefoot, carrying a bucket. They vanish into the fog before he can offer help. Somewhere behind them, a factory bell tolls. Another shift beginning because sleep is a luxury Grayhaven cannot afford. Harrison keeps walking. The streets are half drowned in shadow, the lamps burning like tired eyes. On one corner, a man sleeps sitting up against a wall, newspaper for a blanket. The headline reads, "Trade expands. Wages fall." Harrison folds the paper gently over the man's chest, a small gesture against a cold too deep for blankets. He passes an alley where two boys are huddled near a fire in a tin drum. One hums softly, the other coughs between the notes. They look up as he nears, wary but curious. "Evening, boys," he says. "Morning, more like," one replies. "You the doctor from Ancoats?" "Sometimes." "You fix lungs?" "I try." "Then you're in the wrong city." The boy grins crookedly, and for a moment Harrison can't tell if it's defiance or wisdom. Maybe both. He hands them a loaf of bread from his satchel, the one Grace insisted he take. "For your trouble," he says. They nod, eyes bright in the firelight. He walks on. "Have you ever heard a city breathe?" the storyteller's voice asks softly. Not its noise, not its traffic, but the sound beneath it, the ache that never stops. At the river he stops again. The water glows faintly orange with reflected light from the mills. Barges drift silently under bridges, their hulls heavy with coal. The smell of iron and damp fills his lungs. Harrison leans on the railing, watching the current drag bits of refuse downstream, scraps of paper, fragments of cloth, a doll missing an arm. He wonders how many dreams have floated away this same way, unseen and unmissed. Behind him, laughter erupts, sharp, sudden, alive. A group of mill workers stumble from a tavern, singing a tune slightly out of key. They link arms, spinning each other in a mock dance, their joy raw and fleeting but real. Harrison smiles despite himself. Even here, amid exhaustion and smoke, life insists on shining. He remembers Grace's words, "There's always something left." A song, a story, a bit of light. The night deepens. He turns toward the hill above the river, where the gasworks loom like sleeping giants. The air grows hotter, the ground trembling softly underfoot. Great plumes of smoke rise and twist against the moon, forming shapes that seem almost human, gray angels or ghosts of laborers still working in the afterlife. He closes his eyes and listens. The rhythm of the machines merges with the wind, with distant coughing, with footsteps, 1,000 small sounds forming one unending hum. In that moment he feels the city not as streets and buildings, but as a living body. The factories its lungs, the chimneys its ribs, the people its blood, flowing, burning, spent. And he wonders, if Grayhaven is alive, what disease afflicts it? Greed? Indifference? Hunger itself? He whispers to the fog, "If this city has a heart, where is it hiding?" A voice answers from the shadows, a night watchman, lantern swinging. "Heart? You'll find it buried under the mills, doctor. Same place we left our souls." They exchange a quiet nod before parting ways. Back at the dispensary, Harrison sets his lantern down. The walls hum faintly with the echo of the world outside. He writes a few words in his journal, though his hand trembles from fatigue. Grayhaven never sleeps because it is afraid to dream. He closes the book, leans back in his chair, and listens again to the city's breathing, slow, ragged, but still alive. The storyteller's voice softens to a whisper. Every city has a pulse, but some beat only to survive. And as the last train whistle drifts through the night, Harrison finally closes his eyes, not in rest, but in surrender to the unending hum of a city that refuses to stop. Morning breaks, not bright, but pale and trembling through the fog. The air smells of coal and wet stone, yet somewhere in the heart of Grayhaven, bells begin to ring. Not factory bells this time. Church bells. Dr. Harrison follows the sound, curious. It leads him to a small brick church tucked between warehouses, its windows soot-blackened, but its doors wide open. Outside, a cluster of people stand beneath the weak sunlight, dressed in their best clothes. Coats brushed clean, shoes polished, ribbons pinned to threadbare sleeves. It's a wedding. The bride's gown is simple, patched in places but white where it matters. She holds a handful of daisies tied with twine. Her groom wears his only suit, shiny at the elbows, nervous in the shoulders. Harrison lingers at the gate, not wanting to intrude. But the old woman beside him, gray hair pinned under a bonnet, notices his hesitation. "You a friend of theirs, doctor?" she asks. "Not yet," he smiles. "But I think I will be." Inside, the church is warm from bodies and candlelight. Children fidget in the pews. A violin squeaks uncertainly in the corner. The priest's voice trembles as he speaks, not from age but from emotion. The vows are short, spoken in quiet tones that still fill the room. When the couple joins hands, the bride's fingers are stained faintly with dye, evidence of her work in the textile mill. The groom's palms are rough, scarred from machinery. Together, their hands look like Grayhaven itself, scarred, strong, beautiful in defiance. When the priest pronounces them husband and wife, the crowd erupts in applause that sounds like laughter trying to survive. Someone begins a song, off-key but full-hearted, and soon the whole room joins in. Outside, the celebration continues in the courtyard. Tables are set with whatever could be spared: loaves of bread, pies, small bottles of ale. Children chase each other between benches, their laughter cutting through the smoke. Harrison stands beside the old woman again. She nods toward the newlyweds. "Mary and Will," she says proudly. "My granddaughter. Saved 3 years for that dress. Says she wanted to feel like a queen just once." "She does," Harrison replies softly. Mary's cheeks glow pink as she dances with her husband, the hem of her dress brushing the muddy ground, her laughter bright as the church bells. For a few moments, Grayhaven itself seems to pause as if listening. "Have you ever seen joy in a place that had no right to hold it?" the narrator asks gently. "Would you believe it could bloom even here, where the air itself can kill?" A small band begins to play, a fiddle, a whistle, a drum made from an old tin. The rhythm is uneven, but no one cares. The music rises above the factory's drone, a rebellion disguised as a tune. Harrison feels something shift inside him. After nights of death and despair, this noise, this laughter, this imperfect beauty, feels like medicine of another kind. He sits with the old woman, accepting a slice of bread. "How do they do it?" he asks. She shrugs. "You can't starve forever, doctor. Sooner or later, you have to feed on hope." Later, as the couple shares their first dance, the crowd forms a ring around them. Someone throws a handful of flower petals, gray with soot but still fragrant. The groom lifts the bride's hand to his lips and the crowd cheers. And then, a sudden gust of wind sweeps through, carrying the church smoke away for just a moment. Sunlight, true and golden, slips through the clouds and falls across the couple like a blessing. Everyone gasps softly. Even the priest smiles. Harrison feels his throat tighten. In all his years of medicine, he's never seen a cure like this. Love strong enough to outshine pollution. When the music slows, Mary catches his eye and approaches. "You're Dr. Harrison, aren't you?" He nods, surprised. "You treated my brother last winter," she says. "Thomas, the boy from the paint works." Harrison freezes. "How is he?" Her smile falters. "Gone now, but you were kind. He said you talked to him like he mattered." He swallows hard, the warmth of the moment cooling around him. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," she says. "He died believing someone saw him. That's more than most get." Then she smiles again, soft but sure, and returns to her husband. Harrison stands there a long while, the sound of laughter mixing with distant factory whistles. Life and labor intertwined, inseparable. When he finally walks away, he feels lighter. The soot still clings to his coat, but not to his spirit. Some days, the storyteller whispers, the city remembers it was built by hearts, not just hands. That night, as he writes in his journal, he adds only one line. Joy is not the absence of pain, but its defiance. The next morning, the bells ring again. Slower this time, softer, as though the city itself is whispering hush. Dr. Harrison follows their sound through the narrow streets of Grayhaven, past puddles still glittering with yesterday's confetti. They lead him to a house he's been to before, the cellar home of Sarah, the woman who once gave him a daisy from the crack beneath her door. The door stands open. The air inside smells faintly of candle wax and wilted flowers. He steps down into the darkness and sees the small coffin on the table. White paint flaking. Daisies laid across the lid. Sarah sits beside it, her hands still. Her daughter's face is calm now, fever gone, eyes closed, a tiny ribbon at her throat. She's sleeping, Sarah says quietly, though her voice is steady in a way that frightens him. Harrison nods, removing his hat. Yes, he says. She's sleeping. Around the room, neighbors move silently, women placing food on the table, men whispering prayers. Children peer from corners, learning too early what it means to lose. A small girl tugs at her mother's sleeve. Will she wake up? Her mother bends down, whispering, "Not here, love. Somewhere better." Harrison kneels beside the coffin, tracing the edge of the wood. "When?" he asks softly. "Last night," Sarah answers. "Went quiet near midnight. Just stopped." He swallows the useless words that rise to his lips. "I'm sorry, I tried, I wish. None of them belong here. Not now." He glances at the photograph above the cradle, the same baby who once died of fever. The wall seems to hold more ghosts than bricks. "How do you go on?" he finally asks. Sarah looks at him, her eyes tired but alive. "Same as always, doctor. One breath after the next, till there aren't any left." She stands, smoothing her skirt. "We're taking her to St. Michael's later. The others are coming." "The others?" "From the church. From the street. Everyone who ever lost one." As she speaks, another woman enters, carrying a small loaf of bread wrapped in cloth. "For afterward," she says simply. Then another man brings a lantern, another a blanket for the mother's shoulders. Grief here is never solitary. It moves through the streets like a river, each household pouring its sorrow into the next, so no one drowns alone. The storyteller's voice softens, low and tender. "Would you still call it poverty if the only wealth they had was each other?" When the time comes, they carry the small coffin up into the gray light. The drizzle has begun again, fine as lace. Children walk beside it holding flowers. Women hum a hymn that wavers like smoke. Harrison follows behind, his steps slow. The sound of their shoes against the cobblestones seems to echo across the city, a heartbeat for the dead. At the churchyard, the priest reads quietly. The crowd stands in silence. Then Sarah steps forward and lays the last daisy on the grave. "For the crack in the stone," she murmurs. "That's where she'll grow." The others nod, some crossing themselves, others simply bowing their heads. When it's done, the people linger, speaking softly, sharing food and stories. Grief and comfort mingling like tea and milk. A man beside Harrison sighs. "You'd think we'd be used to it by now." Harrison shakes his head. "If we ever are, that's when we've truly lost." As the crowd begins to drift away, Sarah remains by the grave. Harrison approaches her gently. "She's not gone," he says. "Not really." "I know," she replies. "She's part of the air now. Part of Grayhaven." She looks up, her eyes wet but clear. "You keep trying, doctor. Don't stop. Even if the world never changes." He nods. "And you?" She smiles faintly. "I'll keep planting daisies." When he leaves, the city feels quieter, not because it mourns but because it listens. That night, Harrison writes in his journal. In Grayhaven, love doesn't end. It just learns how to survive underground. The storyteller's voice fades into the hush of rain. Some flowers bloom only in the dark. And somewhere beneath the soot and sorrow, another seed waits for its turn to reach the light. Night creeps over Grayhaven like smoke over a dying fire. The rain has stopped, and in its place comes music, faint, crooked, rising from somewhere below the factories. Dr. Harrison follows the sound, drawn as though by instinct, until he finds himself outside the King's Anvil, a pub with cracked windows and a door that breathes laughter every time it opens. Inside, the air is thick with pipe smoke and the sweet heaviness of ale. Candles flicker on rough tables. Men and women sit shoulder to shoulder, workers, mothers, dockhands, seamstresses, their faces softened by drink, by fatigue, by the warmth of being somewhere that feels alive. Harrison hesitates at the doorway. He spent his days in silence and suffering. Joy feels almost foreign. Then someone calls out, "Doctor, you look like you need a cure yourself." Laughter follows, and he can't help but smile as he steps inside. A stool opens near the corner and he takes it. On a small stage, really just a wooden crate, stands a young woman with auburn hair, her dress patched but clean. She holds a battered fiddle, and when she plays, the room hushes instantly. The melody begins low and sorrowful, a tune older than the city itself. Then her voice joins, soft at first, then rising, weaving through the smoke like light through dust. We built this town with bleeding hands, with lungs of ash and hearts of sand. But still we stand and still we sing, for hope's the only living thing. The crowd hums along. Even the drunkest man sits up straight for the refrain. Harrison feels something uncoil inside him, something he hadn't realized was wound so tight. When the song ends, the applause is thunderous, mugs clanking, feet stomping the floor. The woman bows, cheeks flushed. Someone buys her a drink, someone else shouts for another song. But she shakes her head. My voice will break if I give you more. Let the next one sing. A man with soot-streaked arms stands, clearing his throat. Right then. I'll do one for the lads at the foundry. Laughter ripples. Someone shouts, make it clean this time. He winks. No promises. And so the night turns. Song after song, each one a confession wrapped in melody, about work, about love, about the things no one says in daylight. A chorus of voices rises for a tune everyone knows. The rhythm is simple, a heartbeat. Even Harrison finds himself humming along, his voice barely above a whisper. Have you ever felt music carry you? The narrator's voice asks softly. Not in your ears, but in your chest, as if the sound itself remembered your pain and forgave it? At the table beside him, two men argue gently over the meaning of a verse. One says it's about God, the other says it's about hunger. Grace would have smiled at that, he thinks. She'd have said they're the same thing in Grayhaven. As the night deepens, laughter grows louder, warmer. Someone starts tapping the table, and soon the whole pub beats along, a chorus of mugs and hands and boots. It's not harmony, not precision, but it's unity. A rare, sacred thing in this fractured city. When the music pauses, the auburn-haired fiddler comes to Harrison's table. You're the doctor, she says. The one who helps the mill folk. I try, he answers. Then you're due a song. He laughs softly. I've no tune worth hearing. She smiles. That's never stopped anyone here. She returns to the stage and plays one last piece, slower, gentler. No words this time, just sound. It drifts through the air like smoke in memory, filling every corner with something that feels like peace. Harrison closes his eyes. For the first time in months, his heartbeat matches something other than despair. When the music ends, the crowd doesn't cheer. They simply sit in silence, unwilling to break the spell. And then quietly life resumes. Mugs clink. Someone coughs. Someone laughs again. Harrison stands to leave. As he steps out into the cool night, the fiddler voice follows him through the open door. Come back tomorrow, doctor. There's always another song to mend the heart. Outside, the fog has lifted just enough for the moon to show, pale, fragile, but there. Harrison walks home slowly, the echo of the melody still in his ears. He writes one line in his journal before the candle dies. Music, the one medicine this city cannot corrupt. The storyteller's voice settles like a blanket over the listener. When the world grows too heavy, sometimes it's not the cure we need, only a song that remembers us. And somewhere in Grayhaven, the singing continues, soft, endless, and alive. The morning after the music, Grayhaven feels gentler. The fog still clings to the streets, but it moves slowly now, like breath instead of smoke. Dr. Harrison walks without direction, letting his thoughts drift where they please. His boots take him to the edge of the commercial quarter, where the buildings grow taller and prouder. Between a bank and an insurance office stands something smaller, humbler but glowing with purpose. A sign over the door reads, Grayhaven Free Library. He hesitates at the threshold. The word free feels strange in this city. Inside, the air smells of paper, dust, and quiet hope. Rows of shelves stretch beneath arched windows that filter what little sunlight the sky can spare. Men in work coats sit shoulder to shoulder at long wooden tables. Their hands are rough, but they turn pages with the tenderness one gives to holy things. A young woman in a plain dress moves between them, whispering suggestions. History books, poetry, anatomy. Harrison removes his hat. The librarian looks up and smiles. Dr. Harrison, isn't it? I've seen you at the dispensary. He nods. You have me at a disadvantage, miss? Miss Keats, she says. I keep this place running when the city forgets we exist. He glances around. Does it forget often? Every day, she says, then gestures to the readers. But they remember. That's enough. He moves among the tables, careful not to disturb the silence. A man in a soot-stained shirt reads Principles of Engineering. A woman studies a book on midwifery and domestic medicine. At another table, a child no older than 10 traces letters on a torn scrap of paper, mouthing the words he copies. We hold these truths. Miss Keats joins him. He comes every afternoon. Says he wants to read to his mother when she's too tired to speak. Harrison feels his throat tighten. Does she work? In the mills, she answers softly. Most do. They pass a small notice pinned to the wall. Books are lent freely. Knowledge belongs to all. He studies the handwriting, elegant, deliberate. Yours? She nods. I wrote it the day they opened this place. Some thought it was dangerous. Books? He asks. Dreams? She replies. They teach people to want more than survival. The storyteller's voice lowers, almost conspiratorial. What would you risk to learn something the world says you shouldn't? A group of workers huddles near the fireplace, arguing quietly over a newspaper article about wages. Miss Keats listens with amusement. They come for the books but stay for the debates. We call them the Wednesday philosophers. One of the men notices Harrison. Doctor, tell us, is it true what the paper says? That the rich live 10 years longer than we do? Harrison hesitates, then answers honestly. Closer to 20. The group murmurs. One of them, a wiry man with coal-black fingers, grins bitterly. Guess that means I'm halfway dead already? Not dead, Miss Keats says firmly. Just waiting for the world to catch up. Laughter ripples through the group. Someone pours tea into chipped mugs, passing one to Harrison. You read, doctor? Sometimes, he replies. Mostly about illness. Then read something better, the man says. We read to remember we're more than what we do. The words stay with him. He wanders to a quiet corner where a single book lies open on a stand, the works of Shelley. The line before him reads, Rise like lions after slumber in unvanquishable number. He closes the book slowly. Revolution in poetry, he murmurs. Miss Keats smiles. The safest kind until someone believes it. The afternoon light fades and the library begins to empty. Each person leaves with something small, a borrowed book, a copied passage, a little more courage than they came in with. Before Harrison departs, Miss Keats presses a thin volume into his hand. For you, she says. He glances at the cover. Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass. I can't. You can, she interrupts. You heal bodies, doctor. But even doctors need words to keep their souls from starving. He carries the book home as though it were glass. That night, he lights a single candle and opens to a random page. The first line he reads is simple. I am large, I contain multitudes. He sits in silence, the words echoing in him like a heartbeat. Outside the factories rumble. But inside, the only sound is the soft turning of pages. A different kind of rhythm, one that builds instead of breaks. The storyteller's voice slows to a murmur. There are cities built of stone and steel, and there are cities built of words. Grayhaven perhaps is both. Harrison writes in his journal before sleep. Knowledge is the only medicine that grows stronger when shared. And for the first time, the city seems just a little less blind. The following evening, Dr. Harrison walks through the upper quarter of Grayhaven, streets so clean they seem to belong to another world. The lamps burn brighter here, their glass polished daily. The cobblestones are dry even after rain, as if the weather itself shows respect. At the end of a wide boulevard stands the Grayhaven Gentlemen's Club, its facade of marble glowing golden in the lamplight. Inside, men in fine coats gather beneath chandeliers, their laughter muffled by carpets thick enough to swallow sound. Harrison was invited by one of the hospital governors, Lord Pembroke, who insists he see how progress funds itself. A porter takes his coat. The air smells of tobacco, sherry, and polish, comfort disguised as civility. At the far end, a fire roars high enough to warm the conscience of every man present. Ah, Harrison. Lord Pembroke greets him, cigar in hand. Come, come. We were just discussing philanthropy, a topic you'll find familiar. Harrison joins the circle of gentlemen, their rings flashing like small crowns as they gesture with their glasses. A banker speaks first. Charity is essential, of course. We must show moral leadership, but never dependency. A factory owner nods. Quite right. Give too much and they'll stop earning. Give too little and they'll riot. Laughter follows, dry, practiced like the sound of papers rustling. Harrison listens, silent. He feels like an intruder in his own city. Doctor, Pembroke says, turning to him, you work among the poor. Tell us, what do they truly need? He considers the question. Clean air, he says finally, and time to breathe it. There's a pause. The banker chuckles. Ah, but that's not profitable. Nor is dying young, Harrison replies softly. The room falls briefly quiet. Then someone changes the subject. A steward appears with wine. The conversation drifts toward politics, trade, the price of cotton. Their voices rise with comfort again. Harrison stares into his glass. The red liquid catches the firelight, the same color he saw last night in the miner's coughing basin. A younger man beside him, Phillips, a mill owner, leans closer. You're right, you know, about the air. Harrison glances up. You think so? Phillips nods. I visited my workers' lodgings once. Couldn't sleep for days after. The stench of the drains, the sound of them coughing through the walls. Yet you still run your mill. He sighs. If I close it, 200 starve. If I keep it, they sicken. Tell me, doctor, which is mercy? Harrison doesn't answer. There isn't one. Across the room, Lord Pembroke raises his glass. To Grayhaven, he declares. The pride of progress, the light of industry. The men cheer, toasting their reflection in one another's eyes. The storyteller's voice drifts toward the listener. If comfort required blindness, would you close your eyes too? Later, as cigars fade to ash, Pembroke escorts Harrison to the door. Don't look so grave, my friend, he says. Our generosity keeps this city from collapse. Perhaps, Harrison murmurs, but it also keeps it from changing. Outside, the fog has thickened again. The glow from the club's windows fades quickly behind him, swallowed by the dark. A carriage rolls past, a lady inside, face lit by lamplight, reading a newspaper headline, Factory output reaches new heights. Harrison turns down a side street, where children sleep huddled under sacks beside a bakery. The smell of bread, warm, unreachable, fills the air. He stops, looking back toward the distant club. The laughter within is faint now, replaced by the low hum of the factories below. He opens his journal and writes by lamplight. Those who dine on silver call hunger a moral failing. Then, almost as an afterthought, the poor pray for bread. The rich pray for gratitude. He closes the book, the fog curling around him like breath. The storyteller's voice softens. Every city tells itself a story to sleep at night. The question is, who gets to wake up? And with that, Dr. Harrison walks back toward the sound of coughing, leaving the warm glow of the club behind him like a false sunrise. The fog has thinned by the time Dr. Harrison reaches the old Methodist Hall at the edge of Grayhaven Civic Quarter. It is late, but the windows still glow, not with candlelight alone, but with conviction. Inside, the city's thinkers have gathered. Scholars, preachers, teachers, workers brave enough to speak when silence has always been safer. A placard by the door reads, in chalk and trembling handwriting, Public discussion, housing, health, and the dignity of labor. Harrison hesitates, then enters. The room smells of ink, damp wool, and the faint sweetness of cheap tea. Benches are packed shoulder to shoulder. Men in factory coats sit beside women with ink-stained fingers, their faces expectant. At the front stands a young man he recognizes, Robert Phillips, the mill owner who'd spoken to him at the club. His coat is plain tonight, his hair disheveled. He looks less like a master and more like a man trying to belong. Gentlemen, Phillips begins, voice echoing slightly in the cold hall, and ladies, thank you for coming. I have stood in both worlds of Grayhaven, and I tell you now, we cannot remain divided. A murmur ripples through the crowd, some skeptical, some hopeful. Harrison takes a seat near the back, notebook in hand. Phillips continues, passion breaking through his reserve. Our workers live in cellars, yet we dine on their labor. They breathe smoke so we may breathe comfort. Is this progress or plague? A man near the front, older, scarred from factory work, raises his hand. And what would you have us do, sir? Tear down the mills? No, Phillips answers. Build them better. Talk's cheap, someone mutters. Then help me make it costly, Phillips replies, steady. I propose a fund, a cooperative, to build housing fit for human life. Owned not by lords or speculators, but by those who live there. Gasp, murmurs, even laughter. A banker at the edge of the hall scoffs. Utopian nonsense. But others lean forward, eyes alive. Have you ever seen hope appear in a room? The storyteller whispers. It begins not as a shout, but as a tremor, a heartbeat that dares to quicken. A woman rises next, Miss Keats, the librarian. Harrison hadn't expected to see her here, yet her calm voice carries clear and firm. I see what poverty does every day, not only to bodies but to minds. Ignorance is the truest disease in this city. If we want change, education must be our cure. Applause fills the hall, hands reddening in the cold. Then another speaker takes the stand, Reverend Collins, his clerical collar gleaming. Charity, he says, is not enough. Charity soothes guilt, justice heals wounds. The Lord asks for the latter. The crowd hums with agreement and fear. Words like these can draw attention from men who prefer the city unmoved. From his bench, Harrison feels the air shift, the scent of courage, the taste of risk. He thinks of Sarah's cellar, Grace's vigil, the songs in the pub, the library's light. Perhaps all of it, all these small sparks, have been waiting for a night like this. Phillips finishes simply, if the city is a body, then reform is not rebellion. It's medicine. Silence. Then applause, slow, deliberate, growing louder until it fills the hall like thunder contained by walls. Harrison claps too, though his hands tremble. After the meeting ends, people linger, exchanging names, ideas, promises. Phillips finds him by the door. Doctor, he says, will you join us? We'll need men of science as well as conscience. Harrison smiles faintly. You'll need luck too. Phillips extends a hand. Then bring that as well. They shake. The gesture feels like the beginning of something fragile and vast. Outside, the street is cold again. But the fog no longer feels like suffocation, more like breath held before a change. From somewhere behind him, Miss Keats's voice calls out, we'll meet again next Wednesday, Doctor. Bring a poem if you can. He laughs softly. I'll try to find one with hope in it. He walks home under the flicker of the gaslights, and for the first time in months, Grayhaven seems to whisper not despair, but possibility. The storyteller's voice softens. Every revolution begins the same way, with one tired soul deciding that kindness should no longer be an exception. That night, Harrison writes by candlelight. Perhaps progress is not the roar of engines, but the quiet sound of people learning to care. And outside his window, the city breathes, not in sickness but in awakening. The next evening finds Dr. Harrison on Fleet Street, not London's but Grayhaven's smaller, dirtier imitation. Ink-stained windows glow with lamplight. Presses clatter behind walls, the rhythm of printing echoing like distant artillery. Words are the city's quiet rebellion. He stops at a narrow doorway marked the Grayhaven Sentinel. Inside, the air smells of ink, sweat, and restless ambition. Piles of paper teeter on every surface. In the corner, a man hunches over a desk, scratching furiously at a page with a half-broken pen. Close the door, the man mutters. You're letting in the fog. Harrison obeys. Mr. Sherrod? The man looks up, pale, thin, eyes burning with sleepless intensity. You must be the doctor. Phillips said you'd come. Harrison nods. He told me you're writing about the slums. Sherrod laughs, low and humorless. Writing? No. I'm translating suffering into a language the rich can't ignore. He gestures to a pile of notes. Testimonies from factory workers, mothers, chimney boys, even widows from the workhouse. Harrison flips through a page. The words bleed with truth. We breathe smoke. We sleep six to a bed. We eat what rats leave. They'll call it exaggeration, Harrison says quietly. They'll call it dangerous, Sherrod replies. Which is how you know it matters. He dips his pen again, hands trembling slightly. You see these faces every day, don't you, Doctor? I treat them, Harrison says. Or try to. Then help me show them. The city hides behind statistics. I need stories that bleed. Harrison hesitates. His training tells him to stay impartial. His conscience refuses. So he begins to speak, of Sarah and her cellar, of Thomas with the shaking hands, of Grace who never slept. Sherrod listens, writing fast, eyes wide. God, he murmurs. They'll hate me for printing this. Then print it twice, Harrison says. A grin flashes across the journalist's face, the first hint of light amid the ink. He holds up one sheet to the candlelight. The headline reads, "The City Beneath the Smoke, Lives Unseen in the Workshop of the World." The storyteller's voice leans closer, almost conspiratorial. Would you dare to tell a truth that no one wants to hear? Sherrod continues writing deep into the night. Harrison stays to help, sorting notes, reading aloud letters from the desperate. Each voice becomes another heartbeat in a growing chorus. Why do you do it? Harrison asks after a while. Sherrod shrugs. Once you've seen what they hide, you can't pretend blindness is innocence. I'd rather be hated than useless. Outside, the presses roar to life, a sound both mechanical and holy. The first sheets slide out, damp with ink. Harrison picks one up. The black letters gleam like wet stone. You think this will change anything? He asks. Sherrod exhales smoke from a half-smoked cigarette. Not yet. But it'll make them look. That's where change begins, with the first unwilling glance. They step outside together just before dawn. The first copies are already being stacked in bundles for delivery. Boys on bicycles wait to scatter the news across the waking city. Sherrod lights another cigarette. This city survives on lies, doctor. But lies are brittle. Hit them hard enough and they crack. Harrison smiles faintly. Let's hope your words swing heavy. As they part, the first factory whistles blow, cutting through the morning air. Men and women trudge to work, unaware that soon they'll read about themselves, or perhaps refuse to. Harrison watches the sun try to break through the smog. It fails, but the light still lingers. He returns to the dispensary and finds a paper already waiting on the doorstep, ink still wet. The headline stares back at him, Sherrod's words bold and alive. The City Beneath the Smoke. He stands there a long time before whispering, "You did it." The storyteller's voice softens to a near whisper. Truth is another kind of medicine, bitter, burning, but meant to heal. That night, Harrison writes in his journal. Perhaps words can do what medicine cannot, force a city to feel. And outside, as Grayhaven wakes to read its own reflection, something shifts in the air, not enough to cleanse it, but enough to make it tremble. Grayhaven wakes to scandal. By noon, Sherrod's article, "The City Beneath the Smoke," is everywhere. In cafes, factories, trams, even the grand clubhouses. The words spread faster than the fog, slipping through cracks of class and conscience. The paper sells out within hours. Newsboys shout headlines that sound like accusations. Children starve in the shadow of profit. Doctors call slums disease factories. For a moment, it feels like the city might finally see itself. But then comes the recoil. By evening, the respectable papers publish their rebuttals, furious, elegant, and dripping with insult. Sensational lies from a self-appointed crusader. An attack on industry and the honor of Grayhaven. At the Gentlemen's Club, cigars burn down faster than usual. Men pace, voices sharp with outrage. Lord Pembroke slams his fist on the mahogany table. This Sherrod fellow should be prosecuted for sedition. Someone adds, and that doctor who fed him lies, Harrison, wasn't it? Dangerous sympathy in a man of science. Harrison doesn't know it yet. He's at the dispensary treating a line of patients when a messenger arrives. A boy, barefoot, breathless. He hands over a folded note. Inside, in Sherrod's cramped handwriting. They've started coming for us. Before Harrison can react, two men in fine coats appear at the door. Dr. Harrison, one says too politely. We have questions regarding your association with a Mr. Robert Sherrod. He looks at the crowd of patients, mothers clutching children, old men coughing blood, and feels anger tighten in his chest. Ask quickly, he says. Did you provide him with medical records? No. Did you speak of your patients? I spoke of human beings. The man's expression hardens. You'll regret that answer. The storyteller's voice lowers, tense and quiet. What do you owe more? Your profession's silence or your conscience's noise? That night, he finds Sherrod hiding in the basement of the Sentinel. The presses are silent now, confiscated. Papers lie scattered, some half-burned, others trampled. They called it defamation, Sherrod says. Said I'm ruining the city's reputation. And what about the city ruining its people? Harrison asks. Doesn't count, Sherrod says bitterly. No profit in pity. Harrison notices the trembling in the journalist's hands. You should rest. I can't, Sherrod whispers. They'll come for me tomorrow. He tries to smile but fails. You know, doctor, I thought truth would set us free. Turns out it just makes the cage visible. A loud knock echoes upstairs. Both men freeze. Police, a voice calls. Open up. Harrison's mind races. He gestures toward the back alley. Go. Now. I can't leave my work. I'll get it, Harrison says, grabbing a stack of notes. You go. Sherrod hesitates, then squeezes his arm. You're braver than you think. He slips out the rear door and vanishes into the night. When the officers burst in, Harrison stands alone. Where's Sherrod? I don't know, he lies. They search the room, overturning papers, smashing bottles of ink, scattering words like shrapnel. Finally, one officer sneers, You should stick to medicine, doctor. Leave politics to your betters. After they leave, Harrison gathers the torn pages, fragments of sentences, half-broken truths. He smooths one out on the table. It reads simply, A city's wealth is its people. He tucks it into his journal. Outside, bells ring midnight. Somewhere across the river, the factory whistles scream as the night shift begins. The great machine goes on, unchanged, unrepentant. The storyteller's voice deepens, almost mournful. Every truth-teller pays in blood, ink, or silence. Sometimes all three. At dawn, Harrison returns to the dispensary. The line of patients is longer than ever, and waiting among them, quietly, is Miss Keats. She meets his eyes and says softly, They can burn papers, doctor, but they can't unsee what's been read. He smiles, weary but alive. Then maybe we've already won. That night, he writes in his journal, If justice is contagious, perhaps tonight was the fever breaking. And though the fog still covers Grayhaven, it no longer feels invincible. Somewhere within it, the first light of reckoning begins to glow. It begins just before midnight, a flicker of orange in the labyrinth of alleys behind the old dye factory. By the time the first alarm bell rings, Angel's Alley is already alight. The air fills with the dry hiss of burning timber and the high, panicked voices of those who've lived their entire lives within shouting distance of despair. Dr. Harrison wakes to the sound of footsteps running past his window. He throws on his coat and rushes toward the glow blooming against the dark. When he arrives, the scene is chaos. Mothers screaming for their children, men hauling water in buckets, smoke clawing at the sky. The tenement roofs collapse in waves, each fall punctuated by the hiss of steam. The fire feeds on everything, wood, cloth, memory. He spots Sarah, the mother from the cellar, clutching her son on the curb. Both are coated in soot. Is everyone out? He asks. She shakes her head, eyes wide with terror. The Jennings girl, third floor. No one's seen her. Without thinking, Harrison runs toward the building. Flames lick the doorway like warning tongues. The heat sears his face, but he pushes inside. The stairwell is half gone. He climbs what remains, choking on smoke. Somewhere above, a child cries, faint, desperate. He finds her curled beneath a collapsed beam, coughing, clutching a rag doll. It's all right, he says, though it isn't. Close your eyes. He wraps her in his coat and carries her down as the ceiling groans. The moment they burst into the street, the roof collapses behind them in a roar that silences everything for one impossible second. Then the city screams again. The storyteller's voice grows low, trembling like the echo of a heartbeat. When a city catches fire, what truly burns? Its buildings or its conscience? Fire engines arrive too late. Their hoses sputter weakly. The pumps can't reach this far into the slums. Neighbors form bucket lines, hands blistered, faces blackened. The rich district glows faintly across the river, untouched, watching from a distance like gods unwilling to descend. Miss Keats appears beside Harrison, a scarf tied around her face, handing out wet cloths to cover mouths. They'll call it an accident, she says bitterly, like all the others. He nods grimly, and they'll be wrong. Hours later, dawn reveals the ruin, a jagged skeleton of brick and smoke. Dozens are missing. Whole families gone. Harrison moves through the ashes, helping where he can. Every face he recognizes feels like a page torn from a book he's failed to finish. Phillips arrives, eyes hollow. I came as soon as I heard. He stares at the devastation, jaw tight. The council will say it's no one's fault. Then we'll make it someone's, Harrison replies. Sherrod appears too, gaunt, soot-streaked, alive but shaken. He'd been hiding nearby, he says, writing again. I saw it start, he tells them. A lantern fell in a room where 12 slept. Whoa. And no one could get out. The windows were nailed shut. Nailed shut, to keep out the cold, to keep out thieves, to keep in the rent. The journalist's eyes blaze. This time they'll read the truth printed in flames. He writes through the morning, sitting on a crate among the ruins, ink mixing with ash. Harrison tends the wounded beside him, doctor and writer side by side amid the wreckage. By noon, crowds gather. Workers from across Grayhaven arrive, silent and furious. A woman raises a burned child's shoe in the air. This is your progress, she cries. The words spread through the crowd like sparks. Philip steps forward, voice breaking. They'll blame the poor as always. But this fire belongs to every factory owner who built their comfort on kindling. The crowd murmurs, not in rage alone, but in awakening. That evening, Harrison walks through what's left of Angel's Alley. The air still glows red in patches. He kneels, picking up a half-burned slate from a child's schoolbook. The words are barely legible. Light is born from fire. He looks toward the smoky sky. Maybe it is, he whispers. The storyteller's voice softens to a near lullaby. Sometimes the world must burn to remember what warmth was meant to feel like. That night, Grayhaven's factory chimneys stand like blackened candles against the sky. The city does not sleep. Neither does its conscience. And as Harrison writes in his journal, his hands shaking from exhaustion, he knows something irreversible has begun. The fire will fade, but the memory won't. Nor will the question it left behind, who burned so that others may live in light. 3 days after the fire, the city holds its breath. Grayhaven's town hall, normally a temple of paperwork and polished shoes, is transformed into a courtroom of conscience. The newspapers call it the Angel's Alley Inquiry. Outside, a crowd gathers in the rain. Workers, widows, children with soot still in their hair. They stand shoulder to shoulder, silent but watching. Inside, under the grand dome painted with cherubs and progress, the powerful sit dry and comfortable. Factory owners, landlords, aldermen. Their boots shine like mirrors that refuse reflection. Dr. Harrison sits near the back beside Miss Keats, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Phillips stands alone at the front, the only man in a fine coat who doesn't seem to belong among the others. The chairman, Lord Pembroke, clears his throat. We are here to determine the cause of the unfortunate fire at Angel's Alley. Unfortunate. The word hangs heavy, too small for the ashes it tries to cover. The first witness is a landlord. He swears the tenement was maintained to the highest reasonable standards. Were the windows nailed shut? A councilman asks. For security, the landlord replies. Security for whom? Harrison murmurs under his breath. The next witness is Sarah, the mother whose child Harrison had saved. She steps forward clutching her shawl, voice trembling but clear. We begged for repairs, she says. The roof leaked. The walls were black with mold. They told us to pay more rent if we wanted it fixed. Pembroke's lips tighten. Mrs. Turner, surely you exaggerate. No, my lord, she interrupts, surprising even herself. If I did, my neighbors would still be alive. The crowd outside cheers faintly, their muffled voices seeping through the walls like rain through cracks. Sherrod sits nearby, scribbling every word. His article about the fire has already turned public grief into fury. But now he writes with a different energy, not outrage but evidence. When Harrison's turn comes, the room grows still. He recounts what he saw, the overcrowding, the sickness, the collapse. Doctor, Pembroke says, you are known for your charity work. But surely this tragedy cannot be blamed on the system itself. Harrison looks up, eyes unwavering. My lord, he says quietly, the system built the house. The fire merely lit it. A murmur runs through the hall. Even the stenographer pauses. The storyteller's voice leans toward the listener. Have you ever felt a silence that weighs more than sound? That's what truth feels like when it finally lands. Phillips rises next, his voice rough with exhaustion. I am a mill owner, he says. I've profited from this city's labor. I've dined with its leaders, myself included. But if we allow men to die for our comfort, then we are not builders, we are butchers with ledgers. The chairman's gavel slams. Order. But order is gone. The words have already escaped into the crowd outside, repeated in whispers and shouts, in the pulse of something larger than any courtroom. Miss Keats stands to deliver the final testimony. She holds a small book, one of the Burn Children's School primers, pages blackened around the edges. This, she says, voice steady, was found in the ruins. Inside are lessons on morality, obedience, and gratitude. I ask you, who should learn from whom? Her question floats in the silence, unanswered. When the inquiry ends, the verdict is predictable: an accident caused by negligence of unspecified parties. No one is punished. No law is changed. The official language wraps itself around the fire like cold water, extinguishing guilt but not memory. Yet outside, the people do not disperse. They stand in the rain as Phillips exits the building, followed by Harrison, Miss Keats, and Sherrod. Someone begins to clap, slow, deliberate. Another joins, then another, until the sound swells into a roar. Phillips lowers his head, ashamed and moved. They cheer us for losing, he says softly. Miss Keats shakes her head. No, they cheer because we told the truth out loud. Sherrod lights a cigarette with trembling fingers. And because now they can't pretend not to know. The storyteller's voice softens. Change rarely begins with victory. It begins with endurance, with people too stubborn to stop trying. That night, Harrison walks home beneath the street lamps. Rain runs down the cobblestones like tears on tired skin. He writes in his journal, "Justice did not arrive today, but perhaps it found the right address." And somewhere in the dark, the city exhales, smoke, rain, and the faintest breath of hope. Grayhaven wakes to thunder. Not from the sky, but from footsteps. At dawn, factory whistles blow, and no one answers. Across the city, machines fall silent, belts hang still, steam cools in the pipes. For the first time in living memory, Grayhaven's heart stops beating on command. They call it the Great Walkout. It begins in the mills near Angel's Alley, spreads through the shipyards, then to the rail depots. By noon, nearly 30,000 workers have joined. Dr. Harrison hears it first as absence, the missing rhythm of the factory's pulse. Then, in the distance, the sound of singing. He steps outside to see the streets filling with people. Men in aprons, women in shawls, children carrying banners painted with borrowed ink. The words shimmer in the drizzle. We built the city, now we'll rebuild it. No more ashes, no more excuses. Miss Keats stands at the front of the crowd, rain dripping from her hair, holding a sign that simply reads, "Light belongs to all." Phillips marches beside her, hatless, unguarded. Some hiss at him, the owner among them, but others cheer when he lifts his voice. No master, no servant, only citizens. Harrison joins them. He doesn't plan to. His white coat makes him stand out, but someone grabs his hand and pulls him into the current. "You're one of us, Doctor," a woman cries. "You've been one of us all along." The city moves like a river now, unstoppable. The rain can't quench it, only sharpen it. At the town hall, lines of constables wait. Batons ready, faces pale. Lord Pembroke watches from the balcony, expression unreadable. "Disperse," the sergeant calls. This assembly is unlawful. The crowd doesn't move. Someone starts a song, low at first, then rising. We are the smoke and the spark, the night and the dawn. The storyteller's voice trembles like distant thunder. What happens when the quiet ones decide to make noise? The police advance. Shouts turn to chaos. Harrison sees a young man struck down near the fountain and rushes forward. He kneels, hands pressed to the wound, shouting for cloth, for water, for space. Miss Keats appears beside him, shielding the man's face from rain. "He's just a boy," she whispers. "He's Grayhaven," Harrison replies. Phillips pushes through the crowd toward Pembroke's balcony, his coat torn, his voice hoarse. "You can't stop them anymore," he yells upward. "You built this storm." Pembroke's voice echoes back, thin and uncertain. "And what will you do, Mr. Phillips? Burn the city again?" "No," Phillips shouts. "We'll rebuild it this time, together." A flash of lightning splits the sky. The rain falls harder. The constables retreat. Even they can't tell who they're fighting for anymore. By nightfall, the strike holds. Factories remain dark. Shops close. But in homes across the city, candles burn in windows, tiny flames of defiance. Sherrod prints handbills on a borrowed press, smuggling them through the streets. Each one reads, Grayhaven stands. The fire did not end it, it began it. The next morning, the paper reaches every doorstep, from the slums to the mansions. Even Lord Pembroke finds one slipped under his door. He stares at the words a long time, then folds it carefully instead of tearing it up. The storyteller's voice softens into rain. There are storms that destroy and storms that cleanse. Which one this is, time will decide. That night, Harrison returns home drenched, exhausted, and alive in a way he's never felt before. He opens his journal with shaking hands and writes, "The city has found its voice. I pray it doesn't forget how to use it." Outside, thunder rolls away into distance. Grayhaven sleeps, not in silence but in power. Grayhaven wakes quietly as if afraid of its own heartbeat. The thunder has rolled away, the rain has washed the soot from the streets, and for the first time in weeks, the chimney stands still. Dr. Harrison walks through the city at dawn. The air smells different, cleaner, almost gentle, though the silence feels heavier than the smoke ever did. No factory whistles, no tram bells. Just the sound of dripping water and the faint murmur of people waiting to see what happens next. The strike is held for 2 full days. Food is running low. Wages are frozen. But no one wants to move first. Not the workers, not the owners, not even the city itself. Harrison passes a bakery where women are handing out leftover loaves to neighbors. Miss Keats stands among them, her sleeves rolled up, hair tied back. She smiles faintly when she sees him. "Good morning, doctor." Or what passes for one. He helps her lift a crate of bread to the counter. "Any news?" She nods toward a folded newspaper on the table. The headline reads, "Talks begin, hope and hunger collide in Grayhaven." Phillips has been summoned to the council chambers. The city's leaders want an end to the strike, but on whose terms no one knows. "They'll try to break him," Miss Keats says. "They'll offer just enough to make it look like mercy." Harrison nods grimly. "And if he refuses? Then they'll starve us out," she says simply. They both fall silent, listening to the echo of carts rattling on cobblestone, the first tentative deliveries in days. Later that morning, Harrison joins Phillips at the edge of the river, where the council building looms. Phillips looks worn, older than his years. "I'm not sure they'll even let me speak," he admits. "They will," Harrison says. "They're afraid not to." Phillips laughs quietly. "You've become bolder, doctor. Maybe I'm just tired of treating the same wound." Inside, the negotiations begin. The room smells of damp coats and fear disguised as authority. Lord Pembroke presides again, his polished calm restored. "Gentlemen," he says, "Grayhaven cannot remain paralyzed. The city must return to order." Philip stands. "Order without justice is not peace, my lord. It's paralysis with better furniture." Gasps ripple through the chamber. Pembroke's eyes narrow. "And what would you suggest, Mr. Phillips?" "Handing the mills to the mobs." Phillips shakes his head. "No. Handing them their humanity." Outside, crowds gather, silent but listening. Harrison can hear their breathing through the open windows. Thousands waiting to learn whether the world will shift or stay the same. Then Miss Keats enters quietly, carrying a bundle of papers. "Petitions," she says. 10,000 signatures in 2 days. From factory workers, dockhands, nurses, teachers. Even a few policemen. She places them on the council table. The sound they make is louder than any speech. Pembroke hesitates. The room feels suddenly smaller. Finally he sighs. "Very well. A commission will be formed, workers and owners both. Conditions will be reviewed, wages reconsidered. It's not victory, but it's not defeat. It's the first compromise Grayhaven has ever seen." Phillips turns to Harrison and Keats. "It's a beginning." She nods. "Every sunrise is." The storyteller's voice grows soft, like morning light filtering through fog. Sometimes change doesn't roar. It whispers, and waits to see who's still listening. As they leave the hall, the crowd outside erupts. Not with cheers but with applause, cautious, hopeful, tired. Harrison feels something lift inside him, a weight he didn't realize he carried. Sherrod pushes through the crowd, waving a fresh sheet of newsprint. "Already printed," he shouts. The headline gleams in wet ink. Grayhaven breathes. Harrison takes the paper, folds it, and tucks it into his coat pocket like a heartbeat. That night, the factories remain dark, but the silence feels different now. Not dead. Resting. Waiting. He writes in his journal by candlelight. Peace built on dignity is fragile but alive, like a lung healing after smoke. And for the first time he closes the book before the candle burns out. The storyteller whispers, "Every revolution must learn to rest or it will burn itself to ash." Outside, Grayhaven exhales, not smoke this time but breath. And the city against all odds begins to dream. Time softens even fire. Weeks turn into months and slowly Grayhaven begins to change. Not with grand declarations or miracles, but with small acts of rebuilding, the kind that happen quietly without applause. The first new law is passed in spring. Every dwelling must have windows that open. It sounds trivial until Harrison walks through the alleys and sees sunlight touching faces that had known only shadow. Children stare at the light as if it were a visitor. The air still tastes of coal, but it also tastes of air, and that, in Grayhaven, feels like victory. At the dispensary, the lines remain long, but there is less hopelessness in the waiting. A public health fund now covers medicine for the poorest. The city council has even hired 2 sanitation officers. Progress, slow and imperfect, smells faintly of soap. Miss Keats's library has doubled in size. Shelves built from reclaimed factory would hold books donated from every corner of the city. She laughs when Harrison teases her about it. They said knowledge wouldn't feed anyone, she says. But have you seen the hunger for it? Phillips, meanwhile, spends his fortune differently now. The cooperative housing project he dreamed of during the reform meeting stands nearly finished. 3 sturdy brick buildings with courtyards and running water. The tenants call them the Phoenix Houses. Not a charity but a community. Rent is fair, maintenance shared, ownership collective. Harrison visits one afternoon to examine a child with a cough. The mother greets him at the door, smiling. "It's the air, doctor," she says. "Not perfect, but we can breathe now." He steps onto the balcony and looks out over the city. Chimneys still rise, but fewer smoke. The river glints beneath a pale sun. For the first time, Grayhaven looks possible. The storyteller's voice lowers to a gentle murmur. What does healing sound like? Not silence, but the slow return of laughter. Sherrod's articles continue, though his tone has changed. He writes less about rage, more about resilience. His latest piece, The City That Learned to Listen, circulates across England, inspiring other industrial towns to reform. Strange, he tells Harrison over tea. I started wanting to expose Grayhaven. Now I only want to see her grow. Even Lord Pembroke surprises them all. After months of resistance, he quietly funds a new infirmary in memory of the victims of Angel's Alley. He doesn't attend the opening, but Harrison receives a note in his familiar script. Perhaps I was wrong to fear the storm. Some fires cleanse. The years slip gently forward. Children born after the strike learn to read before they learn to cough. The streets remain gray, but now they hum with possibility instead of despair. Harrison, older now, walks slower but with lighter steps. He no longer dreams of leaving the city, he dreams of what it might yet become. One evening, he and Miss Keats sit on a bench outside the library, watching the sunset paint the brick walls red gold. "Do you ever think it's enough?" he asks quietly. She smiles. "Enough? No. But it's a start." He nods. "That's all healing ever is, isn't it? A start that keeps going." A group of children runs past, waving small paper kites stitched from old newspaper headlines. One still faintly legible, Grayhaven breathes. The kites dance in the breeze, their tails fluttering against the fading light. Harrison laughs softly. Proof that even old words can fly again. The storyteller's voice softens like the wind itself. Sometimes the future doesn't arrive with trumpets. It drifts in quietly, tied to a string, guided by children who've never seen the dark we escaped. That night, Harrison writes in his final journal, the pages worn thin, the ink lighter now. A city like a body heals in its own time. It scars, it stumbles, it learns to breathe again. And if you listen closely, beneath the hum of the mills and the laughter of its people, you can still hear its heartbeat, steady, stubborn, alive. He closes the book and sets it beside the window. The moonlight falls across its cover like a blessing. Grayhaven sleeps, not the restless sleep of survival, but the peaceful rest of a city beginning to dream of tomorrow. 30 years pass. The soot has thinned, the air hums softer, and the city that once choked on its own ambition now breathes with measured grace. Grayhaven has changed, but it still remembers. Children play where Angel's Alley once burned. They chase each other through a small garden called Harrison Square. A plaque at its gate reads, "To those who tended life in the age of smoke." Inside the square stands a bronze figure of a man in a doctor's coat, holding a book in one hand and a stethoscope in the other. His gaze is gentle, his posture unheroic, more listener than savior. Beneath it engraved words, "We heal what we can, we fight what we must." The storyteller's voice slows, reverent. Time erases faces, but it remembers kindness. It keeps certain names breathing. Miss Keats still keeps the library, her hair now silver, her voice still warm. Children crowd around her as she reads aloud from Dr. Harrison's old journal, now bound and placed among the city's archives. She points to one line they love most. "The cure for despair is each other." The children repeat it like a song. Robert Phillips's cooperative houses have multiplied across Grayhaven. Their tenants hold annual fairs where workers and owners share tables, laughter, and long arguments about everything under the sun. They call it the Feast of Beginnings. At dusk, they light lanterns in memory of the fire that started it all, not in mourning but in gratitude for what it awakened. Sherrod's newspaper still prints, though his name has faded into legend. Every year, the front page carries a quote from one of his articles. "A city's wealth is its people." It has become Grayhaven's motto, carved above the town hall archway where once Lord Pembroke sat in judgment. And Pembroke himself, his portrait now hangs in the new infirmary he funded. Below it, in his own handwriting, "May the next generation forgive our blindness." The storyteller pauses. You can't rewrite the past, but you can footnote it with mercy. Evening settles over the city. Gaslights glow along clean streets, casting halos in the mist. A young doctor closes the infirmary's doors and glances up at the statue in Harrison Square. He carries a journal too, its first page blank, waiting. From somewhere, the faint sound of music drifts, the same folk tune once sung in a smoky pub decades ago. He smiles, whispering to himself, still human after all. The camera of memory rises above Grayhaven. The library's windows bright, the factory roofs silvered by moonlight, the river reflecting lanterns drifting toward the sea. The storyteller's final whisper. Once this city was built from smoke. Now it is built from breath. If you ever walk its streets, listen carefully, you might still hear the echo of those who refuse to stop caring. The wind stirs the pages of an open book on the memorial bench. It closes itself softly as if tucking the story into sleep, and Grayhaven dreams on.